Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of All Around Hockey, the YouTube channel for the All Around Hockey fan. Today we continue on with our series looking at all 32 NHL teams, analyzing their rosters that are currently constructed, looking at what they did last season, and possibly looking at other potential moves that could be used via Puck GM per Puckpedia. Of course, we use Puckpedia to look over the rosters, and Hockey Reference to look over the stats from last year, and Puck GM is on Puckpedia there to look at what other moves could possibly be made. Our last video, we did the Nashville Predators. If you haven't checked that video out, please go check that video out. And all the other videos we've done to this point, we're over the halfway point mark now. As the offseason has died down a little bit, we've been kind of doing this series and been enjoying making it. And I hope you guys have been enjoying watching these videos as well. So this episode is going to be on the New Jersey Devils. We start getting into the New York area teams. We start off with the Devils, a team that is rumored to be in on a couple of big names, but nothing has transpired as of right now. And who knows if something will transpire going into this season or not. But they're definitely linked to a couple of really big names, which we'll go over later in this video. As we can look at how the roster is currently constructed. This is rosters according to Puckpedia. They got Timo Meier, Nico Hischier, Dawson Mercer as the first unit there. Jesper Bratt, Jack Hughes, and Anthony Mantha, who they brought in free agency. They got Gichik there, Rodriguez, and Connor Brown, Stefan Nosen, Nick Bustad, and Cody Glass. There's that fourth unit. Cody Glass, somebody who hasn't really panned out from where he was drafted, but, has become a decent bottom six forward. Jonas Siegenthaler, Dougie Hamilton, still with the team. He was rumored to be in a couple of trades. There's Luke Hughes, Brett Pesce, Brendan Dillon, and Kovac. There rounds out the defensive unit, and then Jesper Boquist, Declan Chisholm, Nico Dawes there is acting as the third goalie with Jake Allen and David Rittich, right, currently constructed as the 1-2 punch in New Jersey. Jake Allen, of course, signed his 5-year contract with them a couple of years ago. And as of right now, is currently slotted to be the starting goaltender for the New Jersey Devils going into this upcoming season. I think New Jersey is a place where he's found home after he's bounced around a few places, and he's really enjoyed it there. So I don't think there's any Jake Allen trades coming anytime soon. So as the team is currently constructed, as we look at it going into this season, the Metropolitan division that they're in with teams like the Islanders, Rangers, Penguins, Capitals, Flyers, the defending Stanley Cup champion Carolina Hurricanes are in there. This is an interesting team. I feel like they could make a run for the playoff, but they also could be a team that finishes bottom out like they did last season. They did bring in a good scoring punch with Anthony Mantha. He leaves Pittsburgh to come there. They also brought in some good depth pieces with Evan Rodriguez in a trade with Florida where they capitalized on their cap crunch. So, all in all, this team, is a team that, maybe makes the playoffs. Maybe could. I don't think they'll make too much of a noise in the playoffs, though, possibly until they get the goaltending figured out, which we'll look into that a little bit more. They're gonna hopefully they're gonna need a big year out of Jake Allen. David Rittich had some good games with the Islanders last year, and Nico Dawes is somebody who I think they still have some faith in. So they got to really hope one of these three goalies pans out for them this year after they traded Jacob Markstrom to Florida. We'll have to see how that might be what puts New Jersey over the edge this year, and depends on if they make the playoffs or not. We're going to go over here to look at Hockey Reference and look what the Devils did last season. They ended with a record of 42 wins, 37 losses, and 3 overtime losses for 87 points. Finished 7th in the Metropolitan Division. Sheldon Keefe is still going to be the coach going into this year. You got to figure he's going to be on the hot seat going into this year with Sonny Meadows, the new general manager, new sheriff in town there. Maybe he wants to bring in somebody of his own ilk, maybe. We'll have to see. But as of right now, Sheldon Keefe is still the coach there. Was hoping for a big bounce back year there in New Jersey. They see goals for. They ended 226 goals for and the 27th in the league, so not the best at scoring goals, and goals against 253, 18th in the league. Obviously, they had a big stretch where Jack Hughes was hurt, where he had that weird hand injury last season, so that definitely affected their stats. We can go down here, look at what they did last season in terms of stats. Jack Hughes still led the way with points, 77 points in 61 games played. So even with him being out that long, it definitely was a huge toll for them. Jesper Bratt continues to be a pretty solid point producer for them, 71 points in 82 games played. Nico Hischier, the captain, played in all 82 games, 66 points there. Really good second-line production. And Timo Meier, 44 points in 77 games. You're probably hoping for more from him. Connor Brown, same thing, 43 points in 75 games. Dawson Mercer, 42 points in 82 games. Again, somebody you're kind of hoping a little bit more out of going into this upcoming season. Dougie Hamilton had 12 goals and 27 assists. He's still going to be that probably that quarterback along with Luke Hughes. Arseny Grishik there had 31 points in 66 games played. And Simone Nemec, who was a big trade piece that they trade over to the Calgary Flames. He ended up wrapping up the top 10 in points for them with Cody Glass and Jonas Siegenthaler right behind him. We can go down here and check out what the goaltenders did last year. Like we said, Jacob Markstrom is now with the Florida Panthers. So, he had an 883 save percentage with a 307 goals against average. We'll see if he can do a little bit better in Florida, maybe with a little bit better defensive structure in front of him. Jake Allen, the starting goaltender going into this year, is going to be 36 this season, had 17 wins, 17 losses, and with a 903 save percentage and 274 goals against average. So pretty good production from Jake Allen. However, he only played in about 37 games. So, you're probably going to look around, maybe 45, 50 games for him this season. Unless a Nico Dawes pops off for them, which I think they're hoping for this season. He had a 908 save percentage and a 262 goals against average. So somebody who definitely I think is going to get a little bit more seeing time going into this year with Jake Allen and David Rich right now as the goaltending tandem. You got to think Nico Dawes is somebody who's going to get some looks at going into this season. So we're going to go over here to Puck GM using Puckpedia. As you can see, the name of the roster that I have, New Jersey Devils 2026-2027 season preview, AAH for all around hockey. Currently, as we can look at it now, they have a 385, 3,850,000 cap space currently. As it's currently constructed, they have 23 men on the roster right now. They have some draft capital, a little bit, 2 first-round picks. A second-round pick, no third, no fourth. They have a 5th and a 7th-round pick, and then 2 first-round picks next season with Colorado's being there. Maybe they could use those first-round picks to maybe make a move, which we'll go over that, like I said, here in a little bit. But as you can see, the team, like we said, currently constructed, maybe middle of the pack in the Metropolitan Division. You got to think Pittsburgh's going to take a little bit of a dive from last season. Philadelphia looked really strong in the playoffs, so they could definitely be on the up and up. Carolina just won the Cup. Washington made some pretty good moves this offseason. And the Islanders and Rangers is kind of anyone's game between those guys. Maybe Pete DeBoer definitely could help out the Islanders. Speaking of the Islanders, that's in our next video. The Rangers a video after that. So if you're an Islanders or Rangers fan, looking over your rivals, be on the lookout for those episodes coming up next. But as you can see, it hit probably middle of the line type of road team right now, but they definitely could make a bigger move. They do have a little bit of in terms of assets. Anton Shalev is a big, gritty defenseman. It's probably the number 1 prospect. Seamus Casey, somebody who had some good years at Michigan. You got to think he's going to be ready to go. They brought in Amadeus Lombardi from Detroit, so you got to think he's going to be somebody who's going to be up for them this season at some point as well. He kind of fits in there. Ethan Edwards is another solid defenseman. 2-way game. And they got Miguel Yegorov and Lenny Hemenio. This is another one of their big prospects. If I mess these prospects' names up, that's just is what it is right now. So they have a little bit of prospect help coming up. Like I said, they brought in Amadeus Lombardi. You got to think he's somebody who's going to get some looks at this season. He didn't get any looks at in Detroit, so you got to think he's going to be somebody who they see some future with as well. The big people they're rumored to be in on right now, could they make a trade, big swing for Jack and Luke's brother Quinn and Minnesota? Obviously there's the big rumor that Minnesota's having a hard time signing him. Do I see Bill Guerin trading him after what they traded to get him? Probably not. I think maybe you could start something out with like Seamus Casey, Dawson Mercer, and a couple of first round picks in order to get a Quinn. I don't know if that necessarily satisfies Minnesota Wild fans or not, but obviously Quinn's going to last year of his contract, and with the way things are going right now, it's kind of looking like he wants to play with his brothers. So obviously New Jersey could end up being the favorites come this offseason, next offseason anyways, to sign Quinn. So you got to think that they probably wouldn't have to trade as much. If Minnesota, if Quinn is definitely not willing to sign back in Minnesota. Another big name they're interested in, that they were interested in early in the offseason, talks have kind of quieted down recently, is possibly a Connor Hellebuyck. I think Connor Hellebuyck makes all the sense in the world to go to New Jersey. I think that's their main thing that they need right now, is a strong goaltender especially to compete in this Metropolitan Division. With the likes of Philadelphia and Carolina and Washington, I think is going to have a big bounce back season this year. They had a pretty solid off season so far. So I definitely think Connor Hellebuyck is somebody who they would, if it was me, if I was Sonny Meta, which obviously I'm not, I'm just somebody who's talking, in his basement. I'm looking over Puckpedia and PuckGM and making these moves. But obviously, I think that's somebody who I would go after more than a Quinn, especially since, like I said, it does all sign. You have the biggest bargaining chip to bring Quinn Hughes in, which is you have both of his brothers. And if he really wants to play with both of his brothers, they definitely strategized when they drafted Luke Hughes to possibly eventually end up with Quinn Hughes at some point in the near future. I definitely think that was the main reason they picked Luke. Obviously, it's turned out really well for them. He just signed his big contract extension, and obviously Jack's locked up for another 3 more years. But you want to obviously keep Jack happy in New Jersey. With Luke playing there and signing him to his extension, that probably definitely helps. But definitely, I think Jack's he just won that gold medal with Team USA. They have that winning itch in them. Obviously, a lot of the Team USA guys do. Brady Tkachuk being traded to Florida and Dylan Larkin requesting a trade out of Detroit. Quinn obviously has that itch too. They definitely would want to make that big move. And so I think if you're Sonny Meta, you have 1 or 2 moves you could make. You could wait out Quinn, or you could trade for Quinn. Like I said, I don't know if you have the pieces to make that trade now that would satisfy Bill Guerin, because I definitely think Minnesota's trying to go for it this season, as they should. But Winnipeg's a team that I think is probably starting to accept the fact that they need to go into a rebuild. And so I definitely think maybe you could make a trade here. They would definitely want a big-time center in return. And Dawson Mercer is somebody who could fit that mold. But obviously he's got only 1 year left on his contract, so you're probably going to need to trade more to make this happen. I think a Seamus Casey would have to be involved in this type of a trade to make it work. And like I said, you had those 2 first-round picks, so probably you're looking at trading at least 2 of these. You're probably picking New Jersey and then Colorado's first-round pick next season, and then maybe even have to even throw in that second-round pick in next offseason as well. Because I definitely think this is a team that's going all out for a rebuild now at this point. And then you probably would even have to include a goaltender to make this work. And you do have a young goaltender. Like I said, maybe somebody who you're hoping makes that big jump is Nico Daws. But this probably is something that would have to entice Winnipeg to make this trade. Nico Daws, like I said, is somebody you're hoping big things out of. Seamus Casey looks like a really solid defensive prospect. Dawson Mercer had some production last season. Maybe Winnipeg's hoping for a bigger name than a Dawson Mercer in that type of a trade. But you're also giving them 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick, so you're giving them draft capital that they can use to start their rebuild. And a pretty solid young goaltender to maybe pair up with Stuart Skinner. You make that trade, I think that definitely helps out the team construction-wise. Connor Hellebuyck definitely now becomes that number 1 goalie. David Rittich probably is the number 3 goalie. Jake Allen there doesn't have to take on that big of a load anymore, so that definitely could help. And then, as you can see, maybe you could call up an Amadeus Lombardi and finagle things around a little bit to make it work out cap wise. But that could definitely be something that they could look at doing going into this upcoming season. I would probably have Jack here on the first unit with Mantha and Brat, excuse me, and then maybe move Ristic up here to the second unit with Tischer and Timo Meyer, and then maybe you can even put Jesper Boquist there on that third unit with Evan Rodriguez and Connor Brown, and maybe Andreas Lombardi makes the call up. Like I said, you might have to finagle things around a little bit to make it work cap structure wise, but definitely I think this is something that could help the team out. Obviously, they could finagle things around to make things work a little bit more. I think this is a competing team at the end of the day. I definitely think this is more of a competing team than running Jake Allen out there every night. Like I said, I like Jake Allen. He's a good goaltender, but, I think if you brought in a Connor Hellebuck, teammates with Jack as well during that Olympic run, I think you probably take your chances and hope that Quinn either doesn't sign a huge extension in Minnesota, which rumors are he's probably not going to sign a huge extension in Minnesota, even if he does. The big rumor right now is possibly a 3-year, $18 million contract, which probably has increased more, which is another reason why things haven't gone in their favor. So that's something that could be holding that back. And also maybe the fact that he maybe does want to come and play with his brothers. That could be a huge determining factor in if Quinn resigns in New Jersey or not. Like I said, you have the biggest leverage out of all other 31 NHL teams with both Hughes brothers playing on there and Quinn possibly wanting to come there. So I think it's more in favor of bringing in a Connor Hellebuck. You only got 2 more years left on Dougie Hamilton's contract. Maybe you can find a way to finagle to move that, or you may have to move a Brett Pesce to make things work out if you sign a Quinn going into next season. Brendan Dillon's on the last year of his contract, so that frees up $4 million. And then you still have enough where you would have maybe some of your, like an Anton Selyav coming up in a couple of years to be that shutdown defenseman pairing in the future. But as of right now, Connor Hellebuck would be the move I would make if I was New Jersey. I definitely think there's more incentive for Winnipeg to move Hellebuck than it was be for Minnesota to move Quinn. I think Minnesota's trying to go for it. I think Winnipeg's starting to accept the fact that they need to go into rebuild. If I was New Jersey, I'd be all over getting in a Connor Hellebuck because I think that's the main thing you're missing in competing in the Metropolitan Division. Maybe you could use a little bit more scoring here and there for the front lines, but I think as of right now, you probably go into the season with what you have here. Maybe you can make a move at a deadline for a big scoring winger to bring in here to shore up that top 6, and maybe move Grishtik back down to the third unit. Or you maybe Andreas Lombardi becomes the real deal for them that they're hoping that he becomes when they brought him in from Detroit. And so you also hope that maybe Cody Glass finally figures it out. Connor Brown is another player who had a little bit of a down year. Evan Rodriguez might be a really big steal that they got from Florida. So all in all, I think this is a team that would be very interesting. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below if you like this move. If you're a New Jersey Devils fan, who do you want more, Connor Hellebuck or Quinn Hughes? Do you think it's smart to maybe wait out and hopefully Quinn hits free agency and you have the biggest bargaining chip? Do you need to get a star goaltender? I'd love to hear from you, Devils fans, what you think going into this upcoming season. How are you feeling with Jake Allen possibly being the starter every night? Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you like this video, please leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe to All Around Hockey, the YouTube channel for the All Around Hockey fan. And stay tuned for our next episode on the New York Islanders. And I will talk to you guys in our next video. All right. Have a good day.